Good evening and welcome to the Quarry Valley Unified Union School District Board meeting. Today is December 14th. If you'd all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Motion by Mike. I'd like to remove policy F3. Any other additions?
Where are we putting, where is that? Hold on. The Quarry Valley Future Talking Points.
Quarry Valley future talking points?
Yeah, it was in the minutes.
Yeah.
We were going to discuss it this.
Right.
Yeah.
Tonight's probably going to be a big discussion about budgets. So maybe could we push that to January?
Is that okay with everybody?
And then it's important to get the budget.
Yep, I'm with you.
So we'll make the January meeting more just principals, Quarry Valley talking points, and I think one other issue might come up tonight that will be on that. Okay?
Yep, thank you.
And then maybe you want to just send me an email exactly what, are we talking about for the budget? Is that what we're talking about, talking points for the budget?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the trifold kind of thing we were talking about maybe making?
Yep.
Okay. So, all right. Any other additions, deletions, corrections? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Before we move on about that, with the talking points, my brain is like, this is, maybe if we approve the budget this evening, we can put a little group together and we can meet with like Louis or Chris to come up with what we want to put on there so we have it.
Agended.
Well, so that we can send it out and have a trifold made like at Staples or something like that to have out at libraries, ball games and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think part of that's probably gonna have to come around what Louis does to like what he puts in his trifold, and maybe you already have some of that. Like the little flyer you put out.
Yep,
Okay.
I have last year's, we haven't started this year's yet.
Yeah, but it's basic information, just plugging in the numbers,
Yep.
right? Yeah, okay. All right. Because I don't think it has to be harder than it, it's just information. All right. General public comment. Anyone present from the public that would like to speak on an issue not on the agenda this evening? Amanda?
Hi. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Amanda Whedon, and I am a parent of a freshman at Poultney. I noticed on tonight's agenda you guys had a transportation concern, and I'm not sure what that involves. But I was just wondering why you guys are doing budgeting, if there is any discussion being had around the Wells students leaving school at 2:30 instead of at regular dismissal time with all of the other students. I know like Middletown students have central drop locations, so they're able to leave at regular time, and I just thought it might be beneficial while you guys are doing budgeting to look into all of the students leaving school at regular dismissal rather than just Wells missing an hour and 15 minutes of class time each week.
Chris?
So Amanda, as we discussed last night at the Wells Springs board meeting when this came up, Louis, myself, and Joe DeBonis have met. We have a solution that would remedy this problem, and we'd be more happy, once we have this, we can share this at both the Wells Springs, Quarry Valley, and SU. So that has been taken care of, so thank you. Amanda, did you hear me?
I'm sorry, thank you. I didn't realize I was muted again.
No, I just didn't know, if you were still there, so I make sure you heard what I said, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, old business. Any old business to come before the board? New business? We have town meeting in your packet. You have the informational 2024 meeting date. The meeting will be at Proctor this year, so it's at the high school in the gymnasium. You have the warning in the packet. Everyone had an opportunity to look over that.
So I listed the carousel meeting just in, depends on how things work out, if there's a need for an additional meeting in January.
If we don't approve tonight.
Right, but if,
Yeah,
or if you don't approve it even in January
Yeah.
2nd, so that we're not looking to schedule, but just, that's something which we can have if needed. So we'll see. And I think the collection of warning signatures was just, once we have the warrant approved, the best way to collect signatures, because I think that's, typically in the past, it's been Lewis or myself driving around towns trying to collect signatures, and that's not really an efficient use of our time. So I think, if we can, pass a budget tonight or pass a budget in January, I think discuss what's a better way for us to collect signatures.
yeah, I think since we're here now, this is pretty central. A lot of people in and out of West Rutland, I think people can come. Kristen will have it, and you sign it just at the front desk, that makes sense. I mean, it's not that far for everybody to come. And if there's an outlier or something that someone can't get here for some reason, then we'll figure that out. And hopefully we pass the budget, or approve the budget tonight. Pass, it'd be nice if we passed it, but approve the budget tonight. And so that'll give us a little more time to collect signatures then. Does that make sense? Okay, great.
And if you get to a point where you need signatures, I would be happy to
Yeah,
drive them around and get them,
okay.
okay, if it comes to that.
I understand. I think it's an important document for board members to sign off on. I think it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
If it
said,
comes
but I
to
think
that.
it's just,
Yeah.
I think people can find a way to stop by and
Yeah.
sign off, as opposed to having someone volunteer their time to drive around personally to individual.
No, but if it came to that, where you needed
Once a
one
year,
or
we-
something and they were sick or whatever,
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah,
happy
sure.
to do it.
So if it comes down to that, we'll do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, and so everyone looked over the warning, I mean, till we approve the numbers tonight, that it's just really the draft, the language, which is pretty much the same draft language as, or same language as every time, so. Okay? All right, transportation concerns.
I already
We're
got
done?
that answered,
Okay.
yeah, and it wasn't the Wells thing, but I have one other one.
Okay,
That buzzer on the front door, does that tell you when,
somebody's.
I might have rang it 1,000 times because it wasn't doing anything when I was swiping it.
I'm never sure if I
I
read
don't.
it or not either.
Yeah, it doesn't
talking at it
tell
too,
me or
John.
give me a noise, so I don't know if I
Transit.
rang it.
So,
Is that transportation?
The one you're leaving, even this door right here?
On the way in,
Yeah.
you swipe up, but it doesn't,
Oh.
and I kept swiping because it wasn't, and I don't know if I rang it 1,000,000 times, and
I did a
well,
few times.
I mean, sometimes just people don't want to let you in, Tom. They won't let you in.
that's fine. I just want to know if I'm doing the right thing here, if it ain't working, I get it.
Well, I
Some
think,
of
I
us
think,
are
Tom,
relegated to the back door.
I think at night what happens is, Christine has a doorbell right there, and so when you swipe up, it does ring. When I have it on my phone, because that's how I have to do it at night, I don't get the same ring, so I have to, if I don't physically have it
But
on.
does it,
It
just one
does,
swipe and it doesn't?
Yeah.
one swipe,
Okay,
it rings,
'cause
but that's the
wasn't
problem
doing
is,
anything.
on this, I don't get the doorbell,
Little
so.
cards.
So I
Yeah.
apologize for that.
All right, moving on. Approval of the November 9th minutes. A motion would be in order to approve the minutes. Motion by Mike. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of warrants. Receive your warrant through your GRCSU email. All questions or concerns should be directed to Lewis. A motion would be in order for the approval of the warrants.
So moved.
Motion by Linda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. I have just a few items to review. So, at the GRCSU meeting, I think last week, I did review the, write a strategic plan update. I placed a copy of that presentation in the board shared folder. There's also a copy of the GRCSU minutes, which and Shauna does a nice job of kind of capturing these things. So feel free to review that. Also, review PEG TV. So for those who are watching on PEG TV, and those of you, if you need a copy of that video or can't access this, please just reach out to Christine McGinnis, and we'll be more happy to share that video or any of these documents with you as well. So our next strategic plan updates will be in April. So we'll look forward to sharing where we're at that time as well. On November 14th, I did have the luxury of driving up to UVM and attending the UVM Outstanding Teacher Ceremony, where two of our staff members in the SU were recognized, and this year the two staff members had to be from Corey Valley. We had Pulteney High School English teacher Dawn Sarley and Proctor High School math teacher Patty Ryan. So I just once again wanted to congratulate them. It is a very nice ceremony. It's a nice evening to recognize individuals for all their hard work and their accomplishments. So it was really great to see two of our individuals be recognized amongst all the other Vermont educators for the great things they're doing for our students here in the GRCSU. So I just once again want to congratulate Patty and Dawn on quite an accomplishment. In the board packet or the board folder that you have, we did include an FAQ from the Joint Fiscal Office around Act 127. I know that's, you're probably hearing a lot about Act 127. Lewis will talk a little bit more about this as well, particularly around advantage versus disadvantaged, you'll also hear the term fiscal cliff. I bring this up because in media and newspapers, there is I wouldn't say scare tactic, but just more in terms of they were making the public aware. But I think, as we did with ESSER, I think the boards, the administration, staff did a very nice job of navigating ESSER funds so that we did not experience this ESSER cliff. It's just something for us to consider as well over the next 4 years as we look at the impacts of, the shift in the way we weight pupils and what that means. As I said, Lewis will talk a little more about this. It's just something for us to consider as we budget and move forward, just to keep that in mind. But there's a nice FAQ document that really kind of lays out where we're at and just answers a lot of questions. But I also would encourage, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Lewis. And I said before, I'm not talking consider, but he does a very nice job of explaining this in terms that are easy to understand for all of us. As Lisa said, we did place a copy of a warning in your folder for review. Just please, if there are any corrections or changes or languages, let us know. We will make those corrections as needed. There is one change just be made aware of. Article 7, which is just the actual language around the budget, has changed a little bit. While in years past we talked about the percent raise. With Act 127, the new language which we were given a pass on last year, we now have to shift the language of that. So that's where you'll see that the language is different this year, and that's because of Act 127, not because it's something that we decided to change. It's just the new language that we have to adopt in there. The rest is just informational things there. So, any questions?
All right, great, thank you. All right, everyone received the principal's reports in your packet and in the drive.
Can we comment about that?
What?
Can we comment about that?
The principal reports? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to compliment Jay on his population chart that he has at the end of his principal report. Appreciate it. I was wondering if we could get the rest of the administrators to do the same, follow the same sort of format, because I think it's good for us to be able to see that. I think it's good for the public to be able to look in there and see the same thing, so.
Are you talking about the enrollment data?
Yes.
I think we all have.
Yeah.
You have a single, you don't have if you look at Jay's has like several years. And I
They
think it's
have 2 years.
Yeah, well, some have 1 year. Be nice.
I think everybody has 2 years.
No, I took my,
I
we
did
used
too.
to all,
Yeah, we all used
because
to
of
have
the
them.
template just had the 1 year on it,
Oh.
so.
So would the board like to see just a last year's and this year's
I
enrollment?
like the way Jay does it, several years.
Is that 2 years, last year's and this year's, or?
So Jay's goes back to 21, I believe.
Yeah,
But 21 is kind of a weird.
I'll give credit, my administrative assistant is the one who does this, so,
Yeah.
does a
I
wonderful
just want to be
job.
clear
Sorry.
on what the expectations are so we can move forward, Mike.
Do we need to go back to 21? I mean,
Well, we're gonna be changing years anyway, so, but I like that multi-year, at least 3 years is my preference, but that's
What would
just
the pleasure of the
me.
board be with regard to that? So just
I'm happy
what,
with
2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years?
I think 2 is fine.
Two.
it is nice to have at least 1 year to compare to, to sort of see, you know, once we get farther away from COVID, it might be nice to have sort of a 3-year outlook, just to kind of know if any 1 year, it's nice, to, you know, an average out of 3 is easier than an average out of 2, right? Like it's, you can see more variation.
Okay, when we look at data, you're looking at 2 years, so, I mean, you need to be consistent when you're looking, but makes no difference to me. It's just whatever you want to put on your building admin to prepare, and it's, what are you using it for? Are people reading it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So is it
2 years?
2 or 3?
Three?
I have no idea.
I'll just copy from my old board reports, that's all I'm gonna do.
Like Kristen said, average of 3 is better than 1 or 2, so, and once you put it in the first time, you don't have to change those
Right,
two. It's just
right.
Yeah.
so once it goes in, it's just one
Yes.
time, so it's not like
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I'll just
yeah.
copy it from.
But to have the
ones
3
I had
is
last year.
a huge advantage, I think, just.
Okay. I did see in Jay's report, he needs approval for the West Rutland senior trip, so if a motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I would say personally, I think the most important thing, and I hope everyone's receiving it, is to be receiving the weekly updates. It's nice to receive the synopsis, but to see what's going on weekly in schools, and I think that each building principal does it a little differently. And I don't think one is better than the other. I think it shows individuality and just the character of your school, but I appreciate reading those every Friday when your building admins send those out or principals send them out, so I appreciate those.
Lisa, I also have a senior trip in mind.
I thought we approved your senior trip
No,
last time.
I asked for a request because there
Oh,
was a little
okay.
out of line with their budget.
Oh, okay. So a motion will be in order to approve the Proctor senior trip also.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on for financial, Lewis.
Okay. So tonight we're looking at and discussing the second draft of the Torrey Valley budget. So last month, we presented the first draft, and at that time, that it was presented, total expense was up 5.5%. But by the time we left the meeting, we had made some changes and additions. So we added the positions that were a request, that were included as a request in the budget. We added the SU approved budget. We also made some changes to the surplus amount. And by the time we had left that meeting, we were up approximately 8%. And that 8% was education spending. So education spending, we started at 4.35. It was expense that was up 5.5. In that meeting, the board had requested that we come back with a proposed budget that had a target of 5.5% increase in education spending. So that's what we did. We went back, we had conversations and made some changes. The budget that you have in front of you, it has a summary page that lists the summary of changes, and that does list all of the items both that we discussed both last month and that are included in this budget. So the budget, the summaries that are included in this month represent proposal 1. So we did, on page 1 of the budget that you received was a budget proposal. And proposal 1 is at the 5.5%, and that is represented in the budget you're seeing tonight. But we did also list 2 other proposals for us to discuss. But discussing proposal 1 first, so right now, the education spending is up, again, 5.5%. We reduced the HR liability. As we discussed last month, that was at 100%. And we know that utilization is not at 100%, plus we ended last year with a surplus. So we're able to, an HRA surplus, so we're able to continue using that. We included the SU's approved budget, the 2 positions that we discussed last month, which was the counselor for Polteny Elementary School and the secondary shared math interventionist. I've updated the vocational and preschool tuition. We've updated tuition revenue. And then actually I made another change to the HRA to 75%, and then changed the surplus revenue. So those are the major highlights. And so that's looking at proposal one on the first page. I've outlined what some of the changes that we've made from the 8% to get us down to the 5.5%. So the total reduction in the HRA budget to 75% had a savings of approximately $100,000. I still think this is a good number. Again, we ended the year last year with the $150,000 surplus in our HRA account. So not budgeting the full liability, I think is still, I think we're still safe based on this 75%. We increased the revenue from the surplus, meaning we lowered the amount we were going to put into the reserve fund by $200,000. We increased our secondary announced tuition amount by $500 from my, if you look at the recommendation that was in the board packet, this is $500 on top of that recommendation. So the recommendation, I believe, was at $18,500. This would be a $19,000 tuition instead. And then we added savings from hiring replacements for the 2 retiring staff of $40,000. That's approximately, it's about a $20,000 savings each. I mean, it may not work out to be exactly $20,000 for each one. One may be more, one may be less, but a total of $40,000 between the two. And that's usually because when we're hiring new employees to replace retiring ones, the retiring ones are usually higher on the scale, and the newer ones are lower on the scale, so there's usually a savings. So that's proposal one.
This is with the anticipation of replacing both staff members, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, so this is a comparison from last year to this year. There's no reduction in staff, it's an increase of 2 staff members, the 2 staff members that I listed earlier that we talked about last month.
Okay.
So the 2 alternate proposals, proposal number 2 is still keeping the HRA reduction, only increasing the revenue from surplus by $120,000, increasing secondary announced tuition still, and that's still in the same proposal, adding the savings from hiring replacements, but not filling one of the retired positions. So we wouldn't fill that retired position, instead we recommend putting that into the capital maintenance fund. And then, so that's really the only difference in proposal 2 as opposed to proposal 1. Proposal 3, again, is very similar to proposal 2, except we would put $160,000 into the capital maintenance and not replace either of the retiring positions.
So not filling positions means a couple of things, right? It means building principals think they have staff, and they're gonna move staff around. I mean, which is an executive session conversation, but,
Correct, so it would be a reduction of 2 FTE, so there would be obviously impacts of that we can discuss.
right. Discussion?
So they are in order of recommendations, but based on the admin team. So proposal 1 would be the one that's more highly recommended. And then
What are the retired positions? Retired
6th grade
positions.
teacher and a science teacher.
secondary science, yeah.
Yeah, high school, or middle school science. High school,
Yeah.
middle school,
I think
Middle
it's
school.
in my middle school.
yeah. What? Oh, Sarah?
So they all get to 5.5. Ooh, sorry, there's an echo there. It looks like the biggest difference is when we're not replacing positions, it's the surplus, right? The amount that's going to the capital budget.
Right.
That, it seems like those were the 2 variables that you were tweaking, right? What's going to the capital budget and then the positions, or the capital,
Yeah, the surplus fund.
Right, yeah. So, Louis, is there what's the thinking behind the value of having more or less put into the surplus fund?
Well, we have 5 buildings to maintain. We know all the buildings have items that need to be repaired. We do have a large sum in the capital maintenance currently, but we know there's facilities reports coming out from the state that we'll be reviewing at future meetings that are gonna highlight some deficiencies in our buildings that need to be repaired, some immediate, some later down the road. So I think any money in that capital maintenance fund will be used in good ways to maintain our buildings. So the offset is, do you want, it's the 2 staff members versus that savings to invest in our buildings. And I think the principals can speak to the impacts of losing those staff members and what that would have on academics versus the investments in the buildings that, not immediate investments, they're investments in future years. One negative impact about putting too much of the surplus into revenue, which I need to mention, because it's always great to have surplus and to give that back to taxpayers, but the negative side of that is if in the future year you don't have a surplus that's as large that you're giving back, then you're starting that next year in a deficit. So using real numbers and just hypothetical speaking, so if you put 500,000 of the surplus into the budget as a revenue, and the next year you only have $200,000 to put into revenue as a surplus, then that difference of 300,000, you're starting that next budget cycle with $300,000 less in revenue. So your tax rate is going to increase based on that $300,000. So putting money into a capital maintenance fund allows you to minimize the peaks and dips in the tax rate and keep it sort of steady and minimize the impacts of those surpluses.
So okay, so number 1 is 5.5. If we go with was it 7.8 last time? That means that we don't go into the surplus at all. Is that correct? When we talked about the increase last time, I thought it was like at 7 point something.
7.86.
86 or something like that. And that meant that we weren't going to fudge with any of the surplus. We weren't going to do anything. We were going to keep all the elementary and the secondary, and everything was going to, because I'm not in favor of not filling positions. I'm just, don't think that's a good thing for kids. Whether we do anything with the surplus, that's up for discussion. But when it comes to not filling positions, I'm not in favor of that. I think we need to fill the positions.
So Linda, right, if we would stay at 7.8%, we would just take this proposal off the table. And these proposals were, we sat down, we looked at, the board gave us a directive to get to 5.5.
Correct.
And our goal was to get to 5.5 without impacting students with regard to staff. And as we look at strategic plan, with one of our priority areas, one of our goals is to look at, offer a wider array of courses and course offerings. As we look at reducing staff, like say proposal 3, that would in fact be it's contradictory to our strategic plan.
It sure is.
And so that's why we looked at proposal 1, which gets us to 5.5%. But like I said, it would lessen the amount of surplus, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it just depends on the pleasure of the board. But
Right.
we they said you asked to come back with 5.5, and our goal was to 5.5, and with the strategic plan in mind, with students in mind, that's what we felt we did. But that's why we brought these 3 proposals to get to that number.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Just a quick follow-up, can you remind us what we put in surplus last year?
We put,
We put 400,000 into the capital maintenance funds, I believe, but I can verify that.
we put like 2 something in the other one,
I think, yeah.
like 280 or something.
That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So last year, we ended with a surplus of approximately 800,000, and we put half as surplus and half half in as revenue and half into the reserve fund. This year, we have a $683,000 surplus. When we were at the last meeting, we ended the last meeting talking about putting 50% of that into the capital maintenance, which would have been roughly $340,000. The proposal one puts 542,000, giving 542,000 back as revenue, and only putting the remaining 140 into the capital maintenance fund.
So I think at the last meeting, we said we had 856 in the capital improvement and 217, 475 in the extracurricular. Does that sound right?
Yep.
But we do have to remember that in January, we'll be talking about the facility report that's coming out from the state that they came down and did on every building. And granted, it's a 10-year forecasted plan that they did, and a lot of things are just, I think we'll see, and I'm just forecasting, because I haven't seen it, that it's going to be, they're looking at, where maintenance, big ticket, but we also know that just, when you read through the warrants, that our boilers are older than our building. Last year, we had to replace a boiler. We've had some issues in a couple other buildings when you read through the warrants that was some boilers and things like that, which is, to be thought. So, that's a conversation for further down the road. I don't want us to think that the capital improvement fund is going to alleviate all these issues that are going to be brought about in that report, But I think the key is, when we look at that, as Louis said, is that you don't want to have, dips and like that for your taxpayers also, so.
So I just want to touch upon the report, since right now it's been sent back to the state for final edit, so once we receive a final draft, but I can speak on behalf of all Evans, when we reviewed that, there were no surprises in this facility report, so there's nothing that shocked us or said, well, we didn't expect that. So I think the discussions we've been having over the years in terms of just, maintenance, upkeep of our buildings we're pretty spot on, particularly our facilities directors as well. There's a cost of operating 5 facilities and maintaining upkeep, but I think that's part of, as we look at, visioning out and down the road, that's just something which we have to continually be discussing. The majority of the assessment, as Lee said, is just about general wear and tear and aging out of, boiler systems and, things along those lines, and just things that we just should be always, each year be preparing for as well. So we are operating 5 facilities, and there's a cost to that, so.
Yep.
So what is the pleasure of the board with respect to proposals, with respect to the prior proposal?
You want me to go through the tax rate before?
Sure, I mean,
First,
it was all in the,
Okay, so if you go to the tax rate sheet, I'll go over that. So, as we've talked about, this is the first year where we're shifting to Act 127, that we're currently in Act 68, acting on this Act 68 funding formula. And moving to Act 127 basically just changes the way we are weighting pupils in the tax rate calculation. So Act 68 did have some weighting, but the emphasis on weighting was mainly based on level of instruction, so secondary students were weighted differently than elementary students. Moving to Act 127, the weighting changes and puts more emphasis on high poverty, low poverty, based on free and reduced numbers, small towns, small schools, and like that population density. And so it does have significant impacts for those towns who are living in a high poverty area. They're seeing a significant change, and which is having an advantageous impact on their budget. And those towns that are living in a very low poverty area are seeing a large impact and being disadvantaged by this change. Act 68 really didn't have a huge impact based on poverty, and so this really tries to change that funding so that it's sending more money to those high poverty towns. Corey Valley is sort of somewhere in the middle, and so they're not highly advantaged or disadvantaged. None of our towns are really highly advantaged in our SU. And I'm sure there's differences between our towns, but this looks at Corey Valley as a whole. In our SU, 3 out of our 4 districts are somewhere in the middle. Small advantages, small disadvantages. But then Rutland Town is really being highly disadvantaged based on their low poverty rates. A piece of the law, because there are towns that are highly disadvantaged, is that it puts a 5% threshold on the maximum that your tax rate can increase at the district level. There is another calculation after the district tax rate is calculated. It looks at the CLA to come up with a town tax rate, but the 5% cap is at the district level, so you can see a difference once you apply the CLA.
And that's coming out at the end of December?
The CLA comes out, it's due out around the December 15th. I think last year we got it around December 20th, 21st, something like
Okay.
that. So, yeah. So we should see that next week. So that 5% cap is in place for the next, it's 4 years up through FY '29. And so some towns do need to take advantage of that, and that cap is in place unless your education spending per pupil increases in any year by more than 10%. If your education spending does increase by more than 10%, you need to go in front of a review board that the state is still putting together the details on that. And that review board would review your specifics as to what's causing your tax rate to increase or your education spending so significantly, and determine whether you still qualify for that cap or not.
Turned it off.
If you qualify for that cap, that difference between the 5% and what your actual spending is being spread across the rest of the districts in the state. When they talk about a fiscal cliff as related to Act 127, that really pertains to those districts who are utilizing that 5% cap. So hypothetically speaking, if you were to spend, if your tax rate was supposed to go up 15% because of Act 127, but you're maxed out at that 5%, that other 10% isn't going away, it's still there. You're just being held harmless, and other districts in the state are covering that for you for this year and for the next 4 years. But once you reach FY '30, that hold harmless provision goes away, and the full tax rate would be assessed to the district. So that's the cliff. So those districts that ignore that difference between the 5% and their actual increase will see a tax rate increase that's pretty significant. It's the district's responsibility over the next 4 years to plan accordingly, and if they know that they have increases that are above that 5%, to either be working on finding efficiencies to lower their budgets, or communicating with their taxpayers that this is coming down the road, and if they want to keep their schools funding at the same levels that they are now without making cuts, and that they'll see a tax rate so that it's not a surprise 4 years from now. Currently, Corey Valley is not at that 5%. I know when we talked last month, we didn't have a lot of that data and didn't know where we would be. So we're not reaching that 5% cap. So that fiscal cliff notion does not apply to us at this time. So looking at the calculation, I would look at the chart on the left-hand side to start. So the first item is your education, your total expense, which is currently up 5.77. Again, this is based on proposal 1. Education spending, which is total expense minus local revenues. Local revenues is everything other than property taxes. So it's your interest income, your tuition revenue, student activity income, stuff, any other grants that you're receiving. So that's currently up 5.5%. The next number is what we used to call equalized pupils, which is now changing to long-term weighted ADM. And so that's the phrase right to the right. If you look at last year's number, we are at 1,013, and that is increasing to 1,723. And that is because of the change in the weightings. So before, each pupil was roughly worth 1, but now it's worth that 1 plus for every FRL student. FRL stands for free and reduced.
That's a good
Lunch.
thing, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So for there's a lot more emphasis on free and reduced lunch eligibility, and it really has a larger, FRL lunch eligibility has always been an important factor in having an impact, but now it has a bigger impact than ever. So it's important that families are filling out those forms, because it will keep our taxes lower. So taking the education spending divided by your equalized pupils, or now long-term rated ADM, you come up with an ed spending ed spending per pupil, or ed spending per long-term rated ADM. A lot harder to say. Of 11,000. You really can't compare those numbers from year to year because this is a transition year. And so like looking at that number right now, it's a 37% decrease because that pupil number has changed so significantly. As we move into future years, we'll be looking at apples to apples type data, and it is a better comparison.
That was one of my main questions in looking at that big difference, and
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was part
So
of it.
if you look at the chart to the right, they have provided us what, if Act 127 was in place last year, what some of these numbers would have looked like. And so our long-term rated ADM for last year was 1,524. It's still not a good comparison because as you can see, there's a 200 pupil increase. And we know our schools haven't grown by 200 pupils. The reason for this is that starting this year, they've made a change to the free and lunch eligibility and mainly in the direct certification numbers. And now, any students that are qualified for Medicaid are automatically directly certified for free and reduced lunch. And so we've seen all of our percentages increase for all of our schools. And so that's playing into this in all of our districts. It's increasing that number.
So, just to repeat, just to make sure I got this, so the qualifications for who qualifies changed so that that's increasing our numbers? Or could be increasing the numbers?
So
that
the
we-
qualifications haven't changed necessarily. So what made somebody eligible before has not changed. But before, if you were on Medicaid, but you were not receiving SNAP or Three Squares Vermont, you weren't directly certified by the state. We pull down a file from the state every month of students that are directly certified, meaning they're automatically qualified, they don't have to fill out an application if they're in one of those state programs like SNAP. Those students who were on Medicaid could have filled out an application, and they would have still been eligible to receive free and lunch, but they had to do that next step of filling out an application. Now, by being able to pull those students that are Medicaid qualified as directly certified, all of those parents that didn't do that next step of completing that application, we're still being able to capture those. So we are increasing our percentages, because there's a lot of families that don't fill out the applications for one reason or another, even if they do qualify. So it's saving us that step. And there's still parents that would qualify that maybe are not on Medicaid or not in one of those state programs that could increase our numbers even more. So it's really getting that communication out to parents. And over the last few years, with the state moving to free meals for everyone, that has been a difficult task, because if they're already receiving the free meals, so there's less incentive for them to fill out the applications. So it's really communicating the other benefits of filling those applications out. And in the past, those other benefits didn't have as big of an impact this year, because now they're going to actually see it in their taxes. So going back to the chart on the left, we take our spending per pupil of 11,000 and we divide it by the property yield. The property yield currently is estimated at 9,452. That was the recommendation from the tax commissioner in his December 1st letter. That number is not final. It's decided by the legislators, usually in April or May. Again, as you can see, if you compare that to last year's number, which was $15,479, that is a significant decrease. And that decrease is almost in line if you look at the increase in the pupils to some degree. Mainly if you look at the chart to the right, it's more in line. And so what that's telling you, so there's a pot of money in the ed fund. And so they use the equalized pupils and the yield to kind of disperse that pot of money. And so if your pupil number is increasing statewide, almost, let's say it's doubling, you need to decrease the yield in order to spend the same amount of money. So it's increasing the pupils, spreading that out differently across the state, and then decreasing the yield so that they don't spend more than they have in the ed fund. So taking the ed spending per pupil divided by the yield, we come up with a unified tax rate of $1.16, which is approximately 2 cents more than last year, 1.6%. This is the number, this is where I was referring to, this is the number that has the 5% cap. So we're not at 5%, we're only at 1.6, so we don't really qualify for that. The last step in the equation is the common level of appraisal. That's the calculation that compares the fair market value of your home to the assessed value of your home. If it's at 100%, those numbers are equal. If that number is less than 100%, it means that the value of your home is more than what it's assessed at. And the last few years with the housing market being so hot after post-COVID, we've all have seen our CLAs drop below 100, some more than others. With the increase in interest rates over the last year, we know that the housing market has slowed. So we're hoping that these CLA numbers have stabilized. We won't know until we see them next week, but we are hoping that they have stabilized a little bit. So the three items that are in red, and if you're looking on a paper copy, or you may not be able to see that. So the three items in red are the three items that are state level data that's still pending and can change. So just to go over those one more time. So that's the common level appraisal, which we'll have next week. Again, hoping that the stabilization based on the cooling of the house market shouldn't have a significant impact on your tax rates, at least negatively. Maybe it'll have a positive impact. The property yield, which is currently at 94.52. The two of the items that could impact the property yield, again, are those districts that spend more than that 5% cap. That money has to come from somewhere. And like I mentioned earlier, all the districts in the state that have not reached that 5% cap are going to be paying that. And that will be in the form of lowering the yield. Lowering the yield increases local tax rates. The offset to that is that if you read the tax commissioner's letter, this yield is based on education spending at 12% statewide. In my opinion, I think that's high. None of our districts are at 12%, and many of them are way below 12%. I know Rutland City was in the paper this morning. They're not at 12%. So if that estimate of 12% is high, that will bring the yield up. And again, bringing the yield up will lower tax rates. The last piece is the long-term weighted ADM. That is still a preliminary number. We did get an email today with a version 2. Now, this is based on version 1. Versions 2 did have Corey Valley's number falling slightly. I'm working with our data manager to see why that dropped a little bit. It dropped about 20 pupils, which does have about a 1.5 cent change to the tax rate. But that number still isn't final. There was a bunch of edits that we've made in the last 2 weeks. We've been working on making sure that our FRL data is accurate as possible. And a new report was just uploaded, I think it was today. So we should have updated data in the next week or two. But all of those numbers can change. But based on these estimates, we are currently looking at a tax rate that is up 2 cents.
Questions for Louis?
Summary of changes, draft 1, the last one. Even if it's shifted to, you're still paying, right?
It wasn't, so there was two things in that line. One is that we increased the athletic officials lines by 20%, so that is an increase in expense.
Yeah,
We know the state is raising, the VPA has raised all the rates for the referees. But the other piece is just saying that we shifted them, because we've moved to a new program. Before, each of the schools were cutting checks to the officials every night that there was a game, which can be
Yep.
burdensome and difficult sometimes. There's a new platform that came out called Arbiter Pay, which is allowing us to pay all of the officials through an online platform. And all varsity officials are required to use it through the state. So because we're
so that goes
using-
through central office? or
No, it's
Corey?
going through Corey Valley district-wide.
Oh, okay,
Because all of the
okay.
schools are using it,
Okay.
it's easier just to keep the officials
Yep.
at the district level rather than at the school level.
Yep.
And I know sometimes district, when using the phrase district, can be confused. Some people mean Corey Valley, and some people think it means SU. In this case, district, we're referring to Corey Valley.
Okay.
Budget questions, clarifications, discussion?
I don't know. What is the PY model?
Is that the one you were just talking about?
Is
The
that the
very
one?
last page?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was when I was, when we were just going over the tax rate.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, if you look to the chart to the right, I included that just so that you can see
Okay.
what Act 127, what tax rate would look like if Act 127 was in place last year.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, okay.
past year.
Past
Year,
year, got it.
okay.
Yeah.
I was like racking my brain
Oh,
like.
yes,
PYP,
PY means prior
year,
year.
sorry. It's like something year, something year.
Thank you.
All right, no discussion, everyone's ready to make a motion and approve the budget?
Well, it's the two things, right? It's the 5.5 and the 7.8. That's the two we have to talk about,
Well,
right?
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
guess those are the,
And those, that would mean everything we talked about, we would take proposal one right off the table. Okay, I just want to be clear.
well, I mean, do you want to start with the proposals? Of the three proposals, they're ranked in order by admin and superintendent business office. So if you were picking a proposal at 5.5, is everyone comfortable with proposal one?
I am, except I don't, I go with the 7.8, but okay. I would go with proposal one. I don't want to see any staff changes at all.
unless they're added, right? Like,
Yeah.
so for this, these ones we're good with, right?
Yeah.
And the counselor and the math interventionist, and that's in proposal one,
And that's
right?
proposal one.
Like, so,
Well, those were put in last time, so.
yeah, in
anything-
draft two, right? I just
So
wanna make
last
sure
time when we met, if you look, that's why it went up from 4
Yep.
to the 7.86, because when we sat here last time,
Got it.
Lewis brought those and we said, put them in.
Yep.
And so that's what grew
That's what
that.
you're calling draft two on the top of the second page of this, right?
Right.
So changes.
And
summary
it
of
tells
changes
you
from
at the
draft two.
bottom, when
Okay. Mm-hmm.
you look at the bottom, personnel changes
Yep.
in budget. So all
Yep.
those things
Got it. Okay.
are in the budget.
Okay, and so
Okay.
that's in proposal one already.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure when I'm reading it at home, I'm interpreting it
Okay.
the right way. Okay.
So is anyone uncomfortable with saying at 5.5 that proposal one is the selection of the board?
No.
Because I want people to have the opportunity to speak and have discussion. So then the conversation is proposal one at 5.5 or the proposal that we left with last time at 7.86 or 8%.
Or it could be somewhere in the middle. So, I mean, I think some of the changes in proposal one could stay, like the change to the HRA and the increase in the secondary tuition and even the hiring replacements, the savings. So it's just a matter of, are you happy with
The surplus.
using 542,000 of the surplus as revenue? Or do we want to use less of that and put more into the capital maintenance fund? So using 542 puts us at the 5.5. If we were to use less as that as surplus, it increases that number.
To what?
Well, it depends on what the number
Where
is.
you want to go?
Okay.
You gotta have a number. So if you said you were gonna put 350 to surplus,
350, use 350 as a surplus amount? That puts our ed spending at 6.57. And it changes our tax rate from a 2-cent increase to low threes, 3.3, 3.4.
What about putting half in of the 542? 2 sevens, what is that? 214, 2 7, 12, 276. Is that it, or 271? Hold on here. Yeah, 271, I think.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Go half of the 542 to 271. Instead of 350, make it 271. Would that make it any big of a difference?
no, I was just throwing a number out.
Right,
Puts
and I
education
appreciate
spending
that.
at 7%.
Okay.
Puts our tax rate up about 4 cents.
I'd be willing to go with that. It puts some back in and it uses some.
Do people want to let this simmer and move on with the meeting? And move back to this? Because there doesn't seem to be a lot of conversation. It's a lot of information.
I think there's some thought going on. My concern is capital. Making sure we have enough in the capital reserve. Because we know as time goes along, things are not gonna get cheaper to fix. And if we have a cushion where we have enough money in the capital reserve for that, it gives at least this opportunity to visit with our taxpayers in the next year saying, look, this is something that we were able to cover, but it's also depleted our reserves, or we may not be able to cover it all and we need your help on this.
I guess the question is then, what is that, what is
Yeah.
the right number? Which is the hard part to answer, right? Because, so there's 856-ish in there now?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
So currently, there's, in the capital improvement, 856, and extracurricular, 217, 475. And I don't think, I mean, personally, I think that we're just looking at capital improvement.
Yeah, I think so, unless you guys.
I mean, that's for discussion.
Have our buildings, I'm trying to take all this in, so I'm kind of coming in short here, so it's a little bit overwhelming. But, so if you're on the fire department, you know that a piece of apparatus is gonna last 20 years.
Mhm.
Where are we in the life expectancy of our 5 buildings?
So that's what you're gonna see when we look at this 10-year plan that the state came and did.
Right.
So,
Because the way that it's set up now, the way the state set this up, it's really no cost saving. There's really, I don't see cost savings. Cost savings is when you have 5 plants and you move to 2 plants.
Right, you don't.
yeah,
That's a business cost saving. So we need to look at, I think, down the road, is we got to start thinking about, do we reduce, the costs are going to go up to maintain our buildings, and costs are going to go up to someday replace our buildings, right? So what do we do with the surplus money? Can we use the surplus money towards expenditures in the future for building a new facility? Can we use
Well, I
it
think
for?
If you're gonna look at building a facility, you have to go out to bond. I mean, that's
$30 million.
that's, you look at what Burlington's dealing with right now, and I think you're never gonna have enough in capital room to really put
Yeah.
a dent in that. I mean, really, you're looking at bond if you're looking at a whole new facility, so, which is another whole discussion.
Yeah, huge discussion. It goes back to buildings.
And
It does.
Those are all good questions, and for aging infrastructure, aging buildings, this is more, I think we had in mind really, is like, if we have an emergency and the boiler goes, right, in the middle of winter, you can't not do that, right? Even no matter how old that building is, your boiler, you still got, or your other HVAC, or a roof, you get an ice storm and ice dam in there.
Unexpected costs.
Yeah,
Yep.
Right.
it's more
Okay.
so that we have something for sort of like emergency and
when we
also
all-
planning out, right?
When we all came to the party, because we all came from very different places, everyone's infrastructure came at a different place too.
Right. The merge.
The
Yeah,
merge.
the merger, yeah. When we merged, right.
The merge party.
Party that nobody really wanted to go to.
Yeah, so when we all came to sing Kumbaya,
Right.
that the state said we had to sing, some buildings, some communities had funds that allowed them to do things outside of general budget and do things to their buildings. Some communities were very in tune with what they were doing with upgrades, and some communities were kind of piecemealing things. So now you're at a place that when we then came to the merge, even technology-wise, we spent a lot of money at the merge making sure we're all like this. Because when we came, some people are like this and some people were like this. So I think talking about, this, I think we can all just say it with a straight face. The state was a bunch of liars when they said if you merged, you were gonna save money.
Right.
I mean, they hired a consultant, they trotted him around the state, they pulled him out and said, up north, we merged 2 SUs and you saved money. Well, you only saved that money one time, because you only merged one time. So when we first merged, yeah, you saved money, because you have one superintendent, one office, and all that. It's not gonna save you for the next 5 years. And so we all knew, anybody that was paying attention knew that going along, every year, we're not saving money if you're gonna operate businesses. But the other big opportunity to the merge was opportunities for our students, right? And those are things that we have been doing incrementally, and did have a plan and a path forward. And then COVID came and spit all over us, and then we had to start over again. So I personally, I think those are the things, yeah, we can say we operate 5 buildings and we're not saving money, but we are offering additional opportunities to students in those buildings. So, and, talking about closing a building or talking about a new building, that's like a whole conversation for another day. And we have articles of agreement that you have to, go by also when it comes to those things. And at this point, we've got 5 buildings, we're operating 5 buildings,
Right.
and that's what we're looking at.
And I think that's if we decide to have that conversation, it has to be after we have the budget passed.
Okay.
Because, and even the fact that they won't come out with the plan about the buildings puts us in a interesting, you should have that information now, but we don't, because that's the way of the world, and that's how it goes.
Well, that's because there were issues in there and it's been sent back and the state hasn't
Right.
returned it to us. So
Right.
it's not like anything's being withheld or we're holding till after the budget. It's just,
It's
The
just,
state is,
that's-
the
well,
the state hasn't given us all the factors.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But we also know some of the issues. I mean, our facility directors have come to building admin and you see it in your principal reports. We hear it and know that, and those of us that were sat here, we're sitting in buildings that were built in 1965 or, we're not foolish about those kinds of things. So we have to be good stewards of the building that we have and maintain them. So, and at this point, that is our path forward, to operate these buildings. And the other pieces, it's not just as easy as say you're gonna, let's say you have a meeting and you decide you're gonna close a building. I mean, there's some geography here that doesn't make sense, for this whole setup to begin with that the state thought was so awesome. So it's not just, a really easy conversation. And I don't think here it would be an easy conversation to have. And I sure as heck don't think out in your communities it's gonna be an easy conversation to have. But that is for another day when I hope I do not sit here. Because I prefer not to be tarred and feathered in my community. So,
So to get back to Mike's ultimate question, is like, what do we look at for that capital improvement number ideally? Like, do we want a certain percentage every year to be, if we can, assuming we have surplus, which we can't always assume, but.
right.
Or do we have like $1 million we'd like to see in there, or,
Well, and so here's the thing coming off, like, the reality is the past few years, you've had money because of ESSER, right? So we've had a surplus. That money's going away. Next year, and Louis has been telling this all along, probably not gonna be that kind of surplus. So it would be nice to see $1 million in there, right? If we put something in there, that would bring us to $1 million.
right, it would bring us to a little over $1 million.
So if we had to replace boilers or something like that.
So last year, the language was up to 50% of the surplus, so if we wanted to stick with the same language to not confuse taxpayers, we would be looking at approximately like 340,000.
but we use the language up to in case it was,
It gives us the-
45% instead of 50%,
flexibility
yeah.
to make a shift if the legislators decided to pass a yield that was significantly different than what the estimate was, and that happens after budgets are approved, and we don't want that to come down on taxpayers with a large increase. It gives us the flexibility to say, okay, do we really need the 50%? Could we go down to 25% and give a little bit more of that back and to offset any change that the legislators had with the yield?
Which would be a talking point.
right.
What'd you recommend, Louis?
I would recommend that we don't go above 50%. Just because I think giving some of it back is definitely great for the communities to see that in their taxes. But on the other hand, I also understand if you don't want to have the education spending as high, so. I think the 50% is a good place.
Well, it gives us the flexibility. I think that's the bonus.
What do you guys think? You say up to 50%?
Yeah, that's what it says. If you pull out the,
That's what it says now, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
The
I'm good
morning.
with it's been going.
So 50% puts our tax rate up based on the data that we know today of roughly 3.5 cents.
So it's 7, what?
Percentage-wise, education spending would be up 6.6 with using 50% of the surplus.
I didn't agree to 50%. I said I like the language, up to
Right,
50,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Get that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I had from last time. It was 6.67.
Like the way it's worded now, right?
I think it's important for us to have the budget supported by all board members, so I think it's important to find a place that everybody can feel
Yep.
comfortable.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
Good with,
Saying put up to 50%.
so that's at 6.6.
Correct.
Okay. Conversation seems to be dragging a little bit. So, how about if I do this? 6.6, 5.5. You tell me as we go around the room where you're at. Kristen,
I'll do the 6.6.
Linda,
6.6.
Sarah.
0.6.
Okay. Sorry, I just didn't want to forget Sarah. Tom,
5.
Jess,
5.5.
Mike,
5.5.
Eric,
5.5.
Rebecca's there.
oh, Rebecca,
5.5.
So we have 5 at 5.5 and 4 at 6.6. So at 5.5, that means putting into surplus of what?
What about 6.0?
5 in the middle.
No, that's lower. You can't go lower at this point. 5.98.
0.001.
So at 5.5, they're putting what into the capital fund then?
Yeah, how much?
Approximately 144,000.
So that seems contrary to some people that voted for 5.5, but I'm just,
It's putting less into the capital maintenance, putting more, giving
Into
more
surplus.
back
Back to-
in revenue.
yeah. And that, okay.
That has a tax rate increase of approximately 2%, which is where we started.
Right.
Yeah,
So there would be less than $1 million in the
yes,
capital improvement fund
yeah.
if we go with the 5.5, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Just shy of $1 million.
Yep. So,
Louis, what would the number be to get to $1 million? If that's the magic number that.
What are we at,
160,
854,
be like
856
160 or
now?
something.
I just threw that out there.
I mean, if we're at 856 now and plus
Yeah.
143, I mean, we can get to $1 million, it's only a
Just-
couple thousand more, it
yeah,
won't
just
have
a-
any, it won't have any
Can have a
impact
bottle drive
percentage
like the
wise.
I don't
kids
know if
do.
people are using that as a number, I don't know if that's.
no, but it's
All the
just
towns
the
combined, we
reality
could make
is that
some-
we have
if
to
you're in Michigan,
keep
you could
in
make
mind
some money
next
with
year,
that.
the surplus is not
So
gonna be
that
like
Dan
this,
Williams-
so.
At the transfer station.
I'm not sure what the advantage is that we're making to taxpayers when you do it in one year and next year you don't, so. And I think that's part of budgeting is forecasting out and looking at the future year.
Yeah, because at some point in time, you're not gonna be able to, I mean.
You're not gonna have surplus.
Right, and you're not gonna be able to
Right.
hold it that 5 or 6%, so, you might be looking at 8 or 9%, so is it smart to hold it back at 5.5, or would it have been better to do the 6.0 or 6.6?
Crystal ball.
Because then you,
Need a crystal
know.
ball.
Or do you think it's going, because the other option is then, what's your next option if you don't have it in there? That's gonna be sell a bond. And we all
For
know
what?
how
Yeah, for what, yeah.
Yeah.
difficult that is, so.
So we're not actually at 856. We did receive $18,000 in a grant for the project that was happening at West Rutland. We just received that since the last meeting. So we're actually at 874 right now.
Okay.
So that puts us over $1 million at 1.4, 142.
So the project was originally all taken out of capital and proved out the grant, we put it back in.
Mhm.
Can you do a 6 on that, see what that number is? Did you do a 6 on,
A 6%?
did you?
I
You may have
didn't.
given us a number and I didn't hear it.
340, so that would be roughly 40,000, I think. Yeah, so using 440,000, and putting 243 in would put us at roughly 6%.
And that puts us up, what, 3,
Cents wise,
Yeah.
it's at like 2.8.
Does that number interest anyone? You put 243 in, you're up 6%, so you're up 2.8 or 3 cents. 2.8.
Well, let's do it again then and see.
Just-
Let's run it around and
First one,
see what
5 point-
people feel like.
5.5 was how many cents? 2.1?
Just like real estate.
Rough, just, well, it's kind of like buying a car, you know, do you buy it with the
I'm a
leather
realtor,
seats
so
or without the
it's
leather
like-
seats, you know, it's still a car.
I feel like I'm
But-
I feel
negotiating.
like are you buying with the extended warranty?
Right.
So for under 3 cents, at 5.5, and we're at 2.1, and it's 6, we're
you're
at
at
2.8.
2.8.
It's still 3 cents.
Yeah,
So you've managed to put a little bit more in capital without
you're
hurting the
gonna get
taxpayer too
undercoated a
much.
few more years on the car here
Yeah.
at
In Vermont
6%.
is a big deal.
All right, so
And
if
just
we-
to reiterate
Risk
again,
factor.
by putting too much as revenue, that's really when we're looking at FY
Right.
'26 budget.
Right.
It's gonna be a
Hurt.
much more difficult budgeting season.
But
When
this
we're
will-
starting hundreds of $1,000s. I
Yes.
mean, we should still have a surplus this year because we still are in ESSER.
Right.
I couldn't tell you how much it is at this point.
So you're saying that with putting 243 in?
No, we're putting too much in as revenue.
the
So, I
three,
mean,
yeah.
if we're gonna be at 5.5, we are putting a majority of it in as
Yeah.
revenue,
Right.
so.
All right, so
And
we're
I
gonna-
support whichever direction you go, I'm just.
We're gonna go around again.
So, can you
So
just
the
say that
option
again?
is gonna be 6% or 5.5. At 6%, you're gonna put in 243 at,
In capital improvement,
yeah, and at 5%, you're gonna put in
40.
140. And you're still gonna be up 3 cents, okay?
Yep,
Everybody got it?
yep.
so.
Rebecca?
Sounds fine.
Say that again?
Start with 5.
Oh, 5.
Sarah?
6.
Clarify Sarah again, or Rebecca.
Rebecca, did you say 5.5?
Nope, 6, sorry.
Okay. Okay. Kristen?
6.
Linda?
6.
Tom?
5.5.
Jess?
5.5.
Mike?
6.
Eric?
6.
All right. So at 6, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You got Sarah, right?
Yeah, she did 6.
Okay. So,
What would that total number be for a motion, Louis, just out of curiosity? Do you have that?
So what we're doing now does not change.
The number
That
on the
number.
draft?
It just changes where it is allocated.
It,
within that.
it's just changing the education spending.
Okay.
The voters aren't budgeting on education spending.
Right. So the number on the draft is the actual number.
so that stays the same.
Yeah. So it's really just changing the up and down. Discussion. It's like, speak now or forever hold thy peace. I don't want to hear after meeting, people didn't have the opportunity to say what they wanted to say.
Well, you never have a problem with me that way, so.
I know.
I know,
Me either, love, but
that's right. We are actually alike in many ways.
we are.
Therein lies the problem.
Therein lies the problem. 2 old hens. That's right.
Oh, God.
And it's turned into a therapy session for Linda and Lisa.
Well, if I understand right, the 5.5 versus the 6 is not gonna change
The increase
the increase at all. It
No.
just changes the internal allocation of what's.
into the
in-
capital fund.
Right.
We still stay
not
with
gonna
proposal
change, right.
1. You're still reducing, increasing the secondary tuition, and still hiring replacements. So there's only one variable that it's changing.
It's just the amount in surplus
Right.
or in
in revenue.
Capital improvement.
So every penny is approximately 160,000, so difference between 5.5 and 6 is 100,000, so it's less than a penny.
So, Tom and
No.
Jess, what, you don't want to put in that much into capital?
5.5.
But you don't want to, so you don't want to put that much in capital?
Because that's
No.
what that means.
Right,
Because that's
yeah,
what it means?
Correct.
Okay.
And you want to put more in surplus because we want to put more money in the surplus rather than capital improvement because.
Or revenue,
it's-
put
or
it in
revenue.
Or revenue.
Yeah. Because you don't want to, you don't have a crystal ball that we can use
No,
to
I don't
think
have a
about.
crystal ball.
We can use to figure out
many
what's the sweet spot there for the capital improvement fund. Especially with, I guess we did, with the PCB stuff is still unknown and this other state report is still unknown.
Well, here's an elephant I'm gonna put out there, and I know it's been said other places, so I might as well just, repeat it, that my concern is that if the state looks at buildings in a given area, and I'm not talking about our district, I'm more talking about like the county, and there seems to be enough expense required to fix buildings, will the state then mandate, say, for example, we're gonna not fix your buildings at all, instead, we're gonna take that money and put it into a union school in a given place?
That's why I was kind of bringing up what.
I think you
said.
take your capital improvement money.
It's the state. Are you really gonna believe anything that they
I'm
won't
gonna
take?
say, they can't take your capital improvement money from.
I'm not saying that they would take that. What I'm saying is that the state would look at, because it seems very unresponsible of them to not have the building surveys back to us before budget.
Yeah.
And
So,
Well-
Mike, so the surveys are out there, they're erroneous, they're things that need to be
I
corrected,
understand.
so.
I'm not,
Right,
yeah.
so I don't think, I understand what you're saying, so these are conversations we've had with the superintendents around what is the real meaning around facilities assessments, like what's the next step? Because we look at Act 46, and the original intent of Act 46 was, was consolidation, and we thought more local communities would embrace consolidation when they didn't. And so I think there is that concern in terms of, we understand that our schools across the state of Vermont are aging out. And what does that mean in terms of that total cost and what the next step is? So, and whether or not this state would come in and force closures, we don't know. But and I think that's what you're worried about is, but I think that's, going back to Tom's crystal ball, of our crystal ball, we don't know what that looks like. I mean, that something could be 10 years, 15 years down the road. But I think there is a concern across the state just around facilities and, that they've not been putting money into this fund, and what that looks like moving forward. So, but I go back to the facility assessment, if there were concerns around this budget, I think that, except, but everything that we looked at has been discussed in our buildings. And so as we look at waiting for the final assessments, I don't think there's going to be shocked. It'd just be a 10-year plan that we just have to look at and say, okay, how are we going to maintain our facilities, or what's the plan? So
it's not our district that I was concerned about.
I understand.
I was concerned about
Right.
other schools that we may not have information on that may impact us. That was my concern, because I think we've been, in all our schools, I think we've been fairly frugal in trying to maintain our buildings at a reasonable expectation for the taxpayer. It's not us that I'm worried about.
Right.
But us is the only thing we can be worried
Understand,
about
but
tonight.
that doesn't limit our conversation.
Well, and the other part is the state has to be looking at Burlington and what a mess that is,
That's
so.
the point.
So why would they want to? So,
Well, because they didn't do well with what they wanted to do with Act 46, which was to close schools. We all know that.
Right.
And that didn't happen.
Right.
So now the guy that I spoke to who is now in the house, said, you know, he came into the house, he was a board member, and he said, what happened? You know, everybody was like, let's fix the schools, let's fix the schools. He got into the house and went, oh my God, there's so much wrong with them, what are we going to do? And then, again, it's we wait till everything is crumbling, but, you know, that goes back to the past, you can't change the past.
Right, and I don't
You-
think
You have to stick
currently-
with where we are and where we're going.
Right, and I don't think, as we said here, our buildings are crumbling.
So,
And that's
you know-
the benefit of how we came together and how communities took care of buildings prior to us coming together, so.
And if it were at 5.52 people and 6.6% 7 people, do we, you know, and said I applaud him, he's not gonna change, and Jess is not gonna change, so do we go and say, you
Go
know?
with the majority.
Yes, we go with the majority and it's
That's all you
6%.
do. It's-
All right, so someone want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. Whatever the motion is, what did you say it was that we?
So the motion would be
3%.
to approve the budget, the Corey Valley Unified Union School District budget to expend $21,035,093.55, which would be an increase of 6%, and put
43,000.
243,000 into the capital improvement fund.
That's my motion. Thank you.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right,
Passed by majority.
I'd like my name in there.
Okay?
Please.
Jess, you want your name? Please. Okay.
Do we want the separate article to list the
What?
dollar amount?
Wait, two things here, two things. All right, so if we're gonna do that, let me do a roll call vote for the budget, okay? So give me 2 seconds. Because my brain doesn't always, like, people that are here. Oh, my God. Okay, so it's just voting because it's not unanimous by roll call. For the motion that was just made. Rebecca, to approve the budget of okay, yes. Sarah,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Tom,
No, thank you.
Jessica,
No.
Mike,
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 yeses and 2 nos. The budget passes by majority. All right, Louis, your question.
So our options for that second article is that we can say, ask the taxpayers to approve 243,000, or we can say up to 35% of the surplus.
I would go with the 243,000.
But that limits your flexibility in case
Oh,
something
okay.
comes along, and that's the difference.
Then I would, okay,
That's the
yes,
only-
you're right.
That's the only,
Yes, you're
But why
right.
35 instead of 50? I thought that was her number, 50, 241.
No. 340 as revenue, that was at 5.5%.
See, told you.
I know.
Change your vote.
340 is 50%. That is the 6.6. We were at 6.6 earlier,
Oh, so.
and then we went down to 6%, which
Okay,
was
so
in the middle.
241. Okay. So I would put the 35%, I think,
Yes.
so that it gives you flexibility. So a motion would be in order for Article 8, for it to read, shall the voters authorize the Board of School Directors to transfer up to 35% of any fiscal year 2023 year-end surplus to the district's capital improvement and Facility and Maintenance Reserve Fund.
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Roll call vote. Rebecca?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Tom?
No.
Jessica?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Yes. So we have 8 yeses and 1 no. Motion passes by majority. All right, what else you got, Louis?
So the announced tuition, so each year we have to announce the tuition that we're going to charge for non-residents to attend our schools. So the details were in the packet. I did list what our current announced tuition is for FY '24, as well as what it is in the surrounding, some of the surrounding schools, as well as the state average. And the state average is what's used for private schools. So these numbers will be a little bit different based on the proposal one that we approved tonight. So it changes our elementary school rate. So the recommendation on this sheet was 16.5. It changes that to 17,000, so a $500 increase. And it changes the secondary rate to 19,000, again, another a $500 increase.
All right, a motion would be in order to approve the FY '25 announced tuition recommendations for elementary Corey Valley to 17,000 for FY '25, and for secondary Corey Valley, 19,000.
Do we know what our neighbors are doing?
Motion would be in order.
Sorry.
I'll make that motion.
Discussion.
Do we know what our neighbors are doing?
We don't know what they're doing for next year yet. Nothing has come out yet. I've been asking some of them, but they don't have any data. But you can see what they are last year, so even 19 still puts us competitively with, so Mill River is at 19 for this year. Slade Valley is at 17.5 for this year, so they're a little lower. Rutland City's at 21,000, and then the state average is 18,266 for this year, so. At 3%, it would put, the only one below us would be Slate Valley.
3% on 19 would be what? Not bad.
It would,
Probably put pretty close to 19,000 anyway.
We're gonna have to work hard.
3% put us at the 18.5.
Yeah.
They're there.
Additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Anything else, Louis?
That's all for tonight.
All right, moving on to contract recommendations. You have before you professional staff. Deanna Rodolfi, West Rutland, teacher, horizontal move from 60,323 to 62,478. Sarah Cheney, Proctor High School teacher, horizontal move from 51,706 to 55,584. Extracurricular, Alex Fox, Proctor High School junior class advisor, 464 stipend. Karen Ames, West Rutland 5-6 basketball coach, $1,500 stipend. Chris Johnson, West Rutland 7-8 boys basketball coach, $750 stipend. Matt Cole, Polteny High School JV basketball coach, $1,600 stipend. Macon Franzoni, Polteny High School JV winner cheerleading coach, $2,382 stipend. Eric Deppert, Polteny Elementary 5-6 basketball coach, $1,132 stipend. Ocean Kelly Beon, Polteny Elementary 3-4 girls basketball coach, $1,411 stipend. Joe Farley, Proctor High Junior High girls basketball coach, $1,148 stipend. Ashley Siemens, Polteny High School junior class co-advisor, $338.10 stipend. A motion would be in order to approve the contract recommendations.
So moved.
I've got to recuse myself from Matt Cole because he's my cousin.
Okay. Any discussion?
Brother's not on there? He was already done? Okay, so.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously with one abstention. All right, we also have in the packet a request from Josh Bunker for sabbatical. You endorse this, Chris?
Yeah, so just as per the section 9.11 of the teacher master agreement, that any teacher after 5 years is eligible to request a sabbatical leave. During this time, the employee would receive no salary nor benefit compensation. They would just maintain seniority upon returning. So, speaking with Josh and speaking with Liz and other admins, I have no issues with the sabbatical leave if the board were to approve it. So,
All right, a motion would be in order to approve the sabbatical leave for Josh Bunker.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Do I need to do a roll call vote for that? For anything, right? I'm so
as
sorry.
long as it's one,
Yeah.
do roll call, yes.
So, roll call vote for the sabbatical. Rebecca,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Tom,
No.
Jessica,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Eric.
Yes.
Motion passes by majority with 8 yeses and 1 no. All right, policies. B4, a notice of non-discrimination, second read. C1, board meetings, agenda preparation and distribution, second read. D2, professional development, second read. And F12, weapons and firearms, second read. A motion would be in order to approve the second reads.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Kristen. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. First read, F8 pre-kindergarten admission. A motion would be in order to move along as a second read, or to approve as second read.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. General public comment. Anyone that would like to speak to something that was been discussed in the meeting? Hearing none. Next meeting discussion.
So, Louis, do you want to? Well, so we have an issue with the January 11th dates. It's more just to discuss with the board that Louis is unavailable due to other conflicts. And so we were wondering if this board would be willing to meet on January 2nd. We have a GRCSU board meeting that night. But if this board be willing to meet January 2nd, which is a Tuesday at 7 o'clock here at Central Office.
Do we need Louis at the January, since we've approved the budget? I mean, would there be?
There'll be updates to CLA and the long-term weighted ADM. If I'm not here, I mean, I can definitely provide those updates in writing.
Okay. How about, is that okay? Is it okay if we meet January 11th and Louis isn't here, or would you prefer to meet on the 2nd after the SU meeting?
I'd rather have Louis here since
I'd
he's
rather
gonna
have
be giving
Louis
updates.
here, yeah.
Okay, so that means meeting at like, what, 7 o'clock?
I mean, I think the GRCSU, we should be able to do that meeting in less than an hour.
You got any long-winded ones on the?
Never.
The same.
Never.
We're 7,
Never.
Only question.
Not 8:30, not 9.
So, no, like I said, we have an IRA at 5 that night here, and then we have Core Valley at 6, and so I think in looking at, as we set the agenda,
We'll just set the SU agenda, so we'll.
right, so, right.
So 7 o'clock, January 2nd here. And then at that meeting also, Louis, do you think we could have, now that we've approved the budget, some of the talking points that Linda's, and that we would put like in your little trifold that you mail out, so we could pick some of those things out And then they want to put them like on a trifold to put out like at libraries, town office, or at ball games and things like that, so,
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue.
okay. Is that good? Okay. So 7 o'clock, January 2nd.
7 PM.
Yep.
All right, everybody good with that? Rebecca, Sarah?
Past my bedtime.
Exactly.
Well, if you join like this, you can be in your jammies and we'll never know.
There you go.
Yeah, some of the weather.
All right, future agenda items. All right, hearing none. So we'll have SU at 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, Quarry Valley, 7 o'clock. All right, and so we'll be talking about, Quarry Valley, we'll be talking about future talking points. We'll have an executive session for personnel. So it would be nice if people could be here for that.
We should have the warning, the final warning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And can we sign it at that point? you
Yes.
think?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. All right. A motion would be in order to adjourn at 7:41. Motion by Mike. Can't imagine there's
He beat
discussion,
you.
kids. All those in favor?